3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the show, everybody. If you don't know who you're seeing on your screen right now, this is Tarzan Dan Freeman, legendary Canadian broadcast TV host. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Excellent.
So nice to be here. Appreciate it so much.
Oh, no worries, man. No worries. So, Dan, we'd like to get into your history. We want to talk about you, which is the opposite of what you typically do.
Yes, it is weird. I got to be honest. When people ask you, can you be on a podcast, or can you be on this interview, or can I interview you? And it is weird to talk about yourself because I don't see it that way. It's funny. In a career where you promoted other people to become incredibly famous and rich, of which I am not. It's the funny thing that when people go, we'd like to talk to you about you, and I'm like, really? I'm kind of boring, actually. But anyway.
Well, that's the power of national television, right? So that's where we first got introduced to you. I mean, we're born in the 80s, but we grew up through the 90s. So those early 90s, YTV hit list, right? You gotta,
exactly.
you made a lasting impression.
Did you guys own the hit list CD? Did you guys go and get that?
No,
I think I had the second volume.
What?
I feel like I had the second.
I never had it. I'm sorry.
Okay. It sold really, really well in Canada. It actually went platinum. Both CDs went platinum.
Oh wow,
yeah.
awesome.
So it was cool.
And I know you did the voiceover for Much Dance.
Put together too.
For the Much Dance '93 commercial, right? You did the voiceover.
I do a lot of voiceover work, and I was especially through the '90s and 2000s, early 2000s. I did a lot of stuff for a lot of bands. So like if everybody from Tool to Bon Jovi to J-Lo to Alanis Morissette to Backstreet Boys to whoever, right? So if you were listening to or watching a TV commercial or you're listening to a radio commercial, it was probably me. Awesome. There's a video out. It's very funny. When NSYNC was really popular, and the guy who was the choreographer, you can Google this, it's Darren's dance moves. And I know it's like one of those infomercial things, and I did the voiceover for it. And so it all of a sudden got this life again because of Ryan Reynolds and of course Deadpool, right?
Yeah.
Deadpool versus Wolverine. And so they had that NSYNC Bye 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 in the movie. And so all of a sudden, this is the guy who choreographed that. He all of a sudden became this thing people were talking about. And so, you remember this infomercial back in the day? And anyways, and it's my voice on it. And it's so weird, and it just went viral. It was like, are you kidding me? And so all of a sudden people followed me on social media because I must be something. And I was like, no, I just did a voiceover, got paid for it, and it was fun to do. And back then, of course, we wanted to be cool, so we wanted bye bye bye. It's like you wanted to dance like them, and it's so typically silly and stupid, but at the same time, you know what? I think that when you look back at the '90s and the early 2000s, even pre-internet, that kind of thing, we really were lucky. The fact that we got to live that era. Where we didn't live in our cell phones, where we experienced things. We went to concerts and not everybody was holding their phone up,
Yeah.
It was one of those things where you were immersed in what you were seeing and experiencing. And I think that unfortunately, this sounds really like an old dude talking, but it's not meant to be that way. It's just that we were fortunate. We got a lot of really great music. We got a lot of really great experiences. And, I think that's lost on this particular generation.
I agree. I do feel like people kind of miss out on having that whole experience and totally immersing themselves into what they're consuming, right? They're not being distracted by, notifications on their cell phone, and they're not sending Snapchats of every concert they go to. They kind of just really absorbed everything that they experience, whether it be concerts or even just TV shows and watching the hit list or Much Music, right? So I agree. Yeah, people are missing out.
One of the things that I always think about is that I wish that I had the ability to take pictures with my phone back in the day, because you're interviewing so many people. And I have, like, if you go to my basement, and I have this big giant blue bin of photographs and autographs and all that kind of stuff. And it's ridiculous how many pictures are in there. But there's still stuff like when I met Brian May from Queen, and totally randomly. And it was one of those moments where you're just like, I can't, we're not.
Yeah.
100%. Wayne's World moment, right?
For sure.
And ironically, I went to high school with Mike Myers. But
what?
So,
No way.
Yeah. So I can tell you a cool story about that too. But anyway, to meet him and then not have a picture with him. You know what I mean? That's like one of those things. It's like, oh, look at this.
We got the poster on the wall. We got the little Funko here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, Mike and I know each other, and Mike. One of the things, if you remember, in the second movie, Wayne's World 2, there's a DJ, and his name is Dan.
Oh.
And we grew up in school together, and we had a radio show, or there was radio in the school, because we had radio and television arts. And so what happened is I had a show on there, and then years later I'm Tarzan Dan, and it was just one of those things where he's like, I grew up, you influenced it, it's you.
Amazing.
It's a caricature of you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Seriously.
That's so cool.
So it's kind of one of those neat things that you never saw coming. And then it's like, are you kidding me? Really? So when they do that thing where they go into the radio station, and the DJ's talking and he's not paying attention to them at all, and he's ignoring them. Yeah. That's supposed to be me.
Yeah. I think they called him Handsome Dan. And then when they went to the
Handsome
studio,
Dan, that's right.
There was a pretty good looking fella, but then the Handsome Dan was the other guy that was there. And like I said, he wasn't listening.
He didn't look like his name, right? Yeah. And I don't look like Tarzan, right? So same kind of. Anyway, nonetheless, it was such a cool thing. I think it was his brother who told me. His brother is a novelist and also writes books and autobiographies and stuff like that, with many different musicians. And I was interviewing him for a book that he had written on Kids in the Hall, I think it was.
Oh, sick.
And then we got talking about us back in high school and stuff like that. And then he says, that's you, right? And I'm like, no, are you kidding me? Really? Oh, that's so cool.
That's incredible.
So anyway.
That's definitely pretty cool.
So that's two legendary things you got going now. So
well, and see, I don't think of it that way. I think of it as like cool experiences I had and cool experiences and things that have happened to me. But at the same time, I don't ever think of it as, wow, look at what I did or what I've achieved. It's just not me to be that way. I feel very fortunate that I got to be the one. I actually had brunch the other day with Stephen Page, formerly Bare Naked Ladies. Yeah. And we got talking about something like that, where it was the idea that, so many people wanted to make it, and we got to do it. Like, we got to do it. And that's so fortunate. That's such a cool thing, because so many people were just as good as us. But why did we get to be the ones? And we never thought about it that way. We just kind of, in our conversation had come up with that and thought, man, that is really interesting when you think about it. Not everybody gets to do this. So, yeah. I just, as you said, iconic moments, but really, I think that it's just been a fun career. It's been so much fun, and I enjoyed it so much. And so to say, yeah, it's cool, is, I guess, the only way I can put it without sounding hyper egotistical.
So from that radio and TV that you did in high school, you kind of knew from that age that this is the career path you were gonna take?
Yeah. I grew up in Toronto, and I listened to the radio every day. We were a pretty poor family, and I was literally the reason I wanted to get into radio specifically, because I never really thought about television. I wanted to get into radio was because you got free music, you got to go to concerts for free, you got to meet all these celebrities, and that was it. I was like, that'd be really cool, because I was a kid. We didn't have a lot, right? Yeah. And so I went and took radio, television arts, and I was really interested in that. Actually, at that time, I wanted to go into television from the side of, I really liked lighting because I loved photography. And so I really loved lighting. And when we did TV productions, I always wanted to be on the lighting crew because I loved creating, looks and moods with light. And so I do a lot of photography personally, and made it my name in that genre as well, which is really bizarre. But, and people are like, that's the same guy? What the hell? And so anyway, so if you want to Google that, you can Google that. My wife is a professional ballerina. And so I got into dance photography, which is the hardest photography you can actually ask to do because it's a moment that lives inside a moment. And so anyways, I got into that and got really good at it and then got known for it around the world, which was kind of cool. And it was bizarre because it wasn't anything that I was doing with radio or television. So just another aside. But anyway, I got into radio and just had a knack for it. I was one of those kids who was hypertonic, a little too much sugar. And I saw on social media that Amanda Marshall had posted a picture of her in high school, and her hair was like this big, right? And she said, the hair was big and I was even louder. And I wrote back and I said, my hair was never big, but I was just as loud, and that was it. I was that kid. I was bigger than what I thought was normal. And even my mom said, this is a true story. My mom said to me one time, because she was a big fan of radio, she liked the guys on the radio. And she said to me, if you got into radio, people would think you were normal. And I was like, okay. And so thanks, Mom. I ended up, having an entire career of it. And then that transitioned into television as well at the same time as doing radio. And I auditioned for the YTV job. I had actually done a couple of segments on Rock and Talk with Laurie Hibbard at the time. And then they were like, we're going to do a video countdown show. Would you like to audition? And I was like, okay. And I'm like, look at me, not God's gift to the human race, as we talked about. But I auditioned and I just did what I did on the radio in front of a camera. And then I got a call back and I'm sitting there with like 25 people and they're all God's gift to the human race. And I'm like, what am I doing here? This makes no sense. But I had borrowed a Janet Jackson autograph concert jacket that we were giving away on the radio. And I had asked them if I could borrow it for the audition. And I went in and I said, hey, if you want to win this, you can watch for me to swing through a video and then write it down and send it to me. And I had remembered the address. So I said what the address was and everything. And so watch for the Vine video. And anyways, and then that afternoon I get a phone call and they're like, if you want the job, it's yours. And I'm like, I bawled my eyes out. I was screaming. I was jumping up and down. I was like, how did that happen? Like, you did meet all the other people, right? So yeah, it was, I still can't believe that it happened to me again. It's just like, how did I end up being the lucky one? And so, it's just been such a fun career. It's been such a weird thing when you look back. I have if we were down in my basement, I have a bunch of stuff on the walls and stuff like that, like awards and autographs. There's big giant Mariah Carey down there. There's a Backstreet Boys, of course. There's all kinds of stuff down there. Weird Al Yankovic, like anybody that was on the show, and Celine Dion rubbing my head. I have pictures of that.
That's pretty cool.
And yeah, it's just, there's so many experiences. People have said, oh, you should write a book. And I'm like, who would want to read it? Like, you know what I mean?
Tons of people. Right here.
Tons of people. Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Cause like from our perspective, like, so it's the same thing we've said to George, same thing, all these people that we've interviewed kind of thing that we're in your space. You guys, I think, because you're inside of it kind of thing, don't realize how much stuff you've all fed to us kind of thing. And then we've taken and run with and change, done our own thing with or whatever. And I think that's the big thing. So like anytime anybody puts a book out, I'm all over it. Like I love that. If they do, like the other day, Strombo and Rick done a little pod thing together. That was really, because it was kind of the same idea, right? You're getting the same type of information. Like it's really interesting. Like all of these things, like YTV, Much Music especially, like both of those channels or those stations were super impactful to us because they came along. Like right now, I've got the old logo up above your head kind of thing, and the screen I've got going. So like I remember when they had just the blue ring YTV. And that's all the logo was. And there was
the old school one.
Yeah, wow. Like when it was kind of like they would just play reruns or whatever.
The little thing went ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, and then the blue screen would come up at the end or whatever and stuff like that. So it was
yeah. And then there would,
Yeah, like the curtain thing or whatever. So like, so I mean, that's really, like at the beginning it was almost like a syndicated type station. They would just play random stuff. So like I got really into the weird, because they only had weird cartoons and stuff. So I got really into that. Then you came on the scene, and then then I think they kind of ran with your idea to a certain degree with YTV, and it sounds like it was kind of like do your own thing there. But it kind of like the zone and those things were kind of kooky too.
Sorry, I was going to say they were really big on hiring talent that had a personality. And so, like whether it was Sugar Baby or PJ Phil or any of us, it was always people who had bigger than life personalities and would draw you in. And I never saw it as that. I just did what I did on the radio, on TV. But, I was a off the hinge radio guy. My show was wild. It was untamed. It was crazy. It was fun. You never knew what was going to happen next. And the same thing with, the TV show. We just came up with lots of really funny and silly ideas to throw in between the songs. And, I still can't believe it worked. Like I still get people today that'll go, yeah, man, when I used to watch your show, the camera moved so much. I was like literally, motion sickness. And I said, you think that was bad? I was on the other side of the camera and I'm trying to follow the camera and he's following me. So anyways, but, and then the worst about being on television for all these years, and George probably has mentioned this, George was always really, really cool. But was the fact that, we all have fashion mistakes, like just nightmare fashion mistakes. And the first year, I think it was, we had a company that did my clothes and what have you. And everything I wore is totally 90s, right?
Oh,
like just, oh my God. So when I see these pictures and stuff, I'm just like, oh, did we not burn that shirt? Or, it's like, did we not like in a ceremony somewhere? And then Indian Motorcycle came in the second year. And I guess I did the show at 7 years, 6-7 years. Indian Motorcycle was the sponsor for that. And so I got all this really cool clothing, right?
That's cool.
And so thank God, because of course, the only clip anybody plays is from the first year. Always. Always. And you're
with the craziest stuff.
That is so embarrassing. Or it's like, yo, it's Tarzan Dan. I'm the hype tip. It's like
all the catchphrases of the 90s, yeah.
It's like, it's just so bad, but I mean, it is what it was. And it was a generation. And at that time that was cool. And we had a lot of fun with it. We really did. We didn't, it's funny. We put a lot into the show. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was be known for doing fun interviews. So that when people came back into town, they would ask if they were doing an interview again with us.
Yeah.
And so like, I remember playing basketball against Montel Jordan, this
nice. Is
baby. And so, but instead of playing real basketball, because he gives me this basketball, I go, no, we're playing mini basketball.
Nice.
And so we're like doing full, body checks and everything and jumping all over the place. It's dunking it. And it's just the stupidest stuff, the most fun that you could possibly have. And getting a chance to practice with the Calgary Flames, that was really, really cool.
Nice.
And just doing things that you wouldn't, you go to, I practiced with the Ottawa Senators as well. We did Winterfest or Winterlude. Sorry, what is it, Winterfest or Winterlude? On where you skate on the canal.
Right.
Oh, yes.
In Ottawa. And I remember Alanis Morissette being there and she was doing a concert and stuff like that. And, it's just, there's so many people that you connected with and they've gone on to such great things. And I'm so proud of them and so happy for them, and wish I was as rich as them, because I'm not. All these people that, I have an entire, whatever, like, I mean, I'm so happy to see that they have done what they dreamed of and been hugely successful at it, and still friends with many of them, so that's the cool part too.
Yeah. Like cool. You were wake surfing with the Backstreet Boys there not long ago.
Yeah.
Right. So that's good. That's awesome.
That was out here at the house. Right behind me, about a block and a half, is the lake. And anyway, what happened was they were doing their Canada-wide tour at that time, the DNA tour. And they were in Vancouver. And I got a phone call, and they're like, guys, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we're going up to Edmonton. Do you want to come to the show? I said, well, unfortunately, I said, Edmonton is a 3-hour drive from where I am in Calgary. And so I got my mother-in-law and her sister. So we got some older women and then my wife, and we all have to come up. And then it's a lot. I said, how about, I just pass on this time. And so Kevin said, he said, well, where are you? And I said, I am, out here just outside of Calgary. And he said, well, how far away from Vancouver is that? And I said, I don't know, about probably 8 or 9 hours. He goes, well, our drivers are only allowed to drive for 10 hours and then they got to sleep. What if we come to your house? And I was like, what? And so he says, yeah, so cool. Let's do that. And I was like, he said, let's see if we can pull it together. So, the small town that I live near has like 2 hotels and one where they could plug their buses in. And so you can imagine like these big, huge concert buses rolling up into this tiny parking lot. And we drove over and picked them up and drove them back out to the lake. And then we went wake surfing.
That's awesome.
And then I had a big barbecue that night, had lots of fun, and just kind of hung out. And we're, because we're friends. And it's just like buds hanging out, and got caught up and had a really great time. Took them back to the buses, and they were on. And then what we did was we didn't share any information about it because there was a rumor that they were in Calgary, and that wasn't something that they wanted to let out, right, because they were like, "This is our time, this is our day," and so anyway. We waited until I got a message saying, "All right, we're on the bus. We're headed to Edmonton," and then I was like, okay, sounds good to me. And then we posted it and put up the pictures and stuff like that. Yeah. And then Backstreet Boys put up the pictures as well. And it was such a wonderful day. So much fun, and had a great time. And recently saw Nick Carter as well. He did a show in Calgary, and he messaged and he goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, we're just out running around doing crap today. It's like, we're not really dressed up. And he goes, oh, come to the show. And I'm like, come to the show? I was like, dude, we look like it's like Saturday shopping clothes. It's not like going out. And anyway, so I said to my wife, what do you want to do? And she says, oh, we could probably go, but I think we're going to have to stop and get me some makeup or something, just so I can put a little bit of a face on it. But we had a great time. And then we went to a sound check and then hung out for about 3 hours, just hanging out, just chatting about stuff and in life. And, he's a dad now and all these different things. And we had a great time, and then we saw the show, and then peaced out, and keep in contact on a regular basis. So that's the cool thing. Like, there's so many people that we still are connected to.
Do you still have that Kentucky Thoroughblades jersey Kevin gave you that one time?
Yes, I do. I still do. Yeah. I have it downstairs I have all my hockey jerseys in one drawer, and so that jersey is there, and I have worn it.
Yeah,
I play hockey. I play hockey, and I'll go play pickup and stuff like that. So I've worn it to pick up, and people are like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Very old school jersey."
Yeah, because I don't think they're around anymore.
Boys. I don't even know. I have no idea.
Yeah,
but I remember we were talking one time, and he had a Kentucky Thoroughblades jersey, and I said, "Man, I would love to get my hands on one of those. Do you want to give it to me?" And he goes, "No, but I might be able to hook you up with one." And so, anyways, he ended up bringing it to an interview, and gave it to me, and I was like, "Oh, pee my pants! This is so cool!"
That's awesome. Yeah. I can only imagine the stuff you have in that little blue bin down there. I mean, so much cool memorabilia, and
Oh, there is. This is funny. I have a pair of Marky Mark's underwear that he autographed.
Oh,
he didn't
that's
wear
pretty
them,
cool.
Just so you know. Okay, no streaks or anything. So no skids in it. But and I have a pillowcase. Madonna had played Toronto, and the radio station that I worked at in Toronto had gotten all her bed sheets. They had purchased them from the hotel, which is crazy, right? And they were going to give them away on air, and they did. And then our promotions director said, "Do you want this?" And I was like, "What's that?" He goes, "This is her pillowcase. It's got lipstick on it." I'm like,
"Oh, snap!"
Okay. So I mean, I haven't looked at it in I don't even know how many years, but it's down there and it's in the bin. And there's just so many cool things like that. I have a ring that Pink gave me. One time we were chatting and she said, "Oh, I love your ring." And I said, "Well, I like your ring. You want to trade?" Okay, this is in the middle of an interview. And so we traded rings. And then recently I actually put it up on social media with a picture of us. And she responded and said, "Oh, that's so cool. I can't believe you still have the ring." So
yeah,
very cool.
That's awesome. I loved your interviews too, because like you said, it wasn't so run of the mill interview. You would always, throw a self-deprecating joke in there, or, get them kind of off guard and kind of, you know what I mean?
Like ask weird questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Love it.
What were you gonna say? Sorry.
Just like all the oddball questions. Like, so you don't what I mean? You don't come at it with, how was it making your new record? Where did you make it?
Oh, I know. Well, right? There is an art to it. I remember watching Larry King, and he said the one thing that you need to do when you interview, because he was talking about interviewing people, he said is find out something they can't possibly know how you know, and don't make it like never be negative. Never try and catch them in something or be a jerk. And I've seen that in interviews where people are like that. It's just not me to do that. I was always really positive, lots of fun. And I remember I interviewed J-Lo one time, and I said to her, "Tell me the story about the time you skipped school and ripped your pants on the fence on the way to a Menudo concert because you had a crush on Ricky Martin." And she looks at me, and she's like, "How do you know this?" And I was like, "I might tell you." And she goes, "You talked to my mom." And I was like, "No, I did not talk to your mom. This was a radio interview that I did with her in Toronto." And anyway, she told the story about how, she had skipped school, hopped the fence, ripped her pants, went to the Menudo concert anyway. And it was a really funny story. She was really amazing about it. And then she goes, "But tell me, who told you?" And I said, "If you're nice to me at the end of the interview, I'll tell you who told me." Well, anyways, it turned out that I had Mark Anthony in, who was her former husband, but also her best friend when she was younger. And so he would know everything. I had him in for an interview about 2 weeks earlier. And anyways, and he had given me the information because I had asked him. And sure enough, she texted me, "I'm going to kill you. I'm so going to kill you." He texted me. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm so dead, but it was so worth it." So
that's funny. That's so good. So I'm going to go back and I want to ask you about like the transition from radio to YTV. And I know you basically did a radio show with someone filming it, but did you find that kind of weird originally? Like when you first kind of was like, "Okay, I'm going to take this job and now I'm going to do this."
It's funny that you say that because it never felt wrong.
Nice.
I never felt nervous. I just did it. I was like, well, this is just performing, except there's a camera on you. And so I never ever got to that point where I was like, "Oh, this doesn't feel right," or I'm nervous about this, because I interviewed these people anyway. So like if I'm going to interview Mariah Carey on the radio, it's the same thing as doing it in person. It's just a camera. And so, that was always really fun. And I never dawned on me that it was supposed to be difficult or hard. I also, because I had taken radio television arts, I already knew how to put shows together, or how to produce or direct myself, or come up with ideas, because I could see how it would look in the camera in my head. And so maybe that was why I was never afraid of it. Nice. I just did it. And maybe that came across in the audition, that I just looked really natural because I didn't, look like I was worried about the camera or what people would think of me. I never did, never have.
Nice.
It's like you
It
take
always seemed
me
natural.
the way you get me.
Yeah.
It always came off natural. I think.
And it definitely, got our attention as, 8 and 10-year-olds, watching you, and you had that natural charisma, and you definitely, had our attention for the whole show, right? Like not many people can command that attention from a 10-year-old or 8-year-old at the time watching. And
Well, that was the thing. One of the craziest things was the show started and we did really, really well out of the gate, and we were doing incredible numbers, like Hockey Night in Canada type numbers. It was bananas, so cool. How many people were watching the show. But that was where you were getting your music other than on the radio.
100%.
And then the audience grew with us. So as they got older, because I did it for 6-7 years, now you have, somebody who started at 12 or 13 years old is now 19 years old and still watching the show. We're tuning in once in a while just to check out what's going on. And that's the bizarre thing, is I thought that we would lose audience because it was YTV is the youth television network, right? So it was one of those things where I thought that they would, kind of get bored of me and go away. But we just continued to have great success. And the funny thing is I don't know if you guys knew this, but I was also one of the voices on Much Music, which is weird, right? Like when you think about it, I was one of the voiceover guys for Much Music during the time that so I would go into Much Music and say hi to everybody, and they'd all know me. And here we are in direct competition, but I was one of the voices and people didn't know. So,
that's crazy.
Crazy, but it just, like I said, such a fun career. So cool. So many great experiences, so much enjoyment out of it.
Did you ever feel like you wanted to cross over into that Much Music world, or were you totally comfortable where you were?
There was a time when I wasn't doing radio at all and was just doing the TV show. And then they decided that they were going to, because the show was so getting older and we couldn't be older. And there were a lot of videos as well where you either had to edit it because it was something too spicy that they couldn't put in or whatever, or they couldn't play it at all because of the content. And so they had decided that would be my final season. And then they took a year off, and then they revamped it, came back with all kinds of, inflatable furniture and a couple of girls and it was very young, and they were playing Aaron Carter and stuff like that. And it had its era as well. So it's kind of cool that, in my era, what I loved was that you had the Backstreet Boys and the Spice Girls and NSYNC and all that kind of stuff. But you also had Smashing Pumpkins and Bush and Collective Soul and Blur, And so when I was doing it, it wasn't all pop.
Right.
It was awesome music. If it was, it's funny. I got into a conversation today about Color Me Bad. And the song All for Love and I Want to Sex You Up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember I Want to Sex You Up couldn't be played on YTV, right? But All for Love could be. And I knew these guys, at the time. And so it was funny that you kind of had these relationships with people, but at the same time, there was so much diverse music because, you'd be like watching Blur, woohoo, and then you'd be watching All for Love. And people would stick around. They'd see a Celine Dion song, and then they'd, be, Collective Soul, shine. It didn't matter what the genre was. And I loved that about it. The radio station I work on right now, I work for iHeart Radio right now. And I work on 22 radio stations across the country that are called Bounce. And it's 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And that's what the format is, I might play Whitney Houston, and then I might play the Stones, right. But it's so cool because they were just such massive hits and people just love them. And I love that we grew up in that era, that we got a chance to experience that because, nowadays it's very genre specific, right?
Yes.
It's like everybody wants to sound like Billie Eilish or everybody, you get different acts or Ed Sheeran, everybody's always, he sounds like or Teddy Swims. Everybody wants to sound like that, and so they get artists that sound similar to that. And we just had the gamut, right?
I think that's some of the beauty of the 90s too, especially like radio or music, TV, all that, because they're right before the internet. Even early internet, you still didn't get really your music from there till Napster kind of hit the scene. But which I'm going to ask you a question about.
Then your computer had a virus. I know. Right?
And you may or may not have got what you didn't ask for, kind of thing. But
yeah, right, exactly.
But I think that's some of the magic, and I think the same thing like with say like the hit list early on, and probably even like the early radio stations that you're on. You could be a little wild, and you could get away with a little more, and it wasn't.
Oh,
and I
some
think
of the stuff
the
that
box,
we did back then, you could never get away with now.
No, definitely
like at all.
But I think what you're saying is like that box, right? It keeps you in those positions. Everything's in its position now, whereas before it used to be whatever you want it to be.
Exactly. It was like, no holds barred, and it was a lot of fun, and it was, off the rails. It really was at times. You're just like, I remember doing an interview with Weird Al Yankovic in his fat suit. Well, no, he was in his fat suit, and this is prior to his show, and him walking up the stairs and squishing me against the railing and stuff like that. And I'm like, buddy, get away. Hey, have you seen Weird Al Yankovic? It was really fun. And then he did, I remember I used to do the instant interview where it was rapid fire questions. And we always ended with your belly button. Is it an innie or an outie? Right. And people would always show you. And I remember him doing, he turned the tables on me. I didn't know he was going to do it. And he did the instant interview. He grabs it from me and does the instant interview for me. And I failed miserably. I was horrible at it. And I was like, man, I put people through this all the time in interviews, and they love it. And it's memorable, and people love it. And I'm such a tool. I cannot even get through this. It was horrible. And anyway, it was a lot of fun though. He and I are really close friends still to this day.
That's awesome.
I feel very fortunate to have him as a friend, and for many years we've been buds, but it just every time we get a chance to see each other, we try to, or if there's going to be a show, I'm making sure that I go and hang out, and we get a chance to just be us. And we are lunatics. We both have the worst sense of humor. I remember when Weird Al's movie was coming out, the one with Daniel Radcliffe. I went and saw him. This is during COVID. I went and saw him, and he wasn't doing any backstage stuff because of COVID. And so he said, but come back. He said, it'd be great to see you. So I come back, and he goes, I'm going to show you the artwork for the movie, but you can't say a thing about it. And I was like, you sure I can't screenshot it and just put it up on the internet and like totally blow it for you? It's like, okay, you got to leave the room. That's it. I'm sorry. But he showed it to me in advance, and like there's just that really awesome relationship. We have this thing between us. It started years ago. Because I've never told this story. I don't think I've told this story. We have this thing that we do to each other and say to each other every time we communicate. Back when I was on YTV, and he and I hosted the YTV Achievement Awards 2 years in a row. We got nominated for Gemini for it and everything like that. That was really, really cool. At one point, we decided to rewrite the entire show because we didn't think it was funny. And so we rewrote the show, stayed up late all night, ate pizza, and just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, barely got any sleep, get up the next morning, we're ready to do the show. And so the show is going like gangbusters. People are losing their minds. They're laughing their butts off. Every joke is hitting. And then what happens is halfway through the first part of the show, he passes me behind the stage, both of us. And we're going like this. So we're supposed to come out on the other side of the stage. And anyways, and he goes, oh my God, it's going so well. This is so great, man. And I grab him and I go, what are you talking about? Stop saying that. And he's like, what? And I said, you suck. And he goes, oh yeah? Well, you suck more. Well, you're like a vacuum. You suck. And I was like, well, anyway, so we get into this whole you suck thing, right? Anyway, we break at half, and the producer director is talking and says, okay, everybody's released to go have something to eat, and then we'll come back and do the second half of the show. Could Dan and Al please stay on the stage? And like, okay, what did we do? Anyways, so he comes down, he goes, hi guys, I just got to make sure that you guys are doing okay. And we keep hearing that every time you pass each other backstage, you yell, you suck at each other. And I was like, oh my God. I'm trying to unjinx him because he jinxed us. He told me how good it was going, and I was so worried that it would so be literally a plane crash. We have to say you suck. So anyway, this became a thing with us, where you suck is how we communicate every time. So somewhere in the message, if we text each other or we email or whatever, or we send each other something, there's always by the way, just want to let you know you suck. And it's been all these years since the YTV Achievement Awards. And then he says to me, by the way, he says, I just outdid you completely. You'll never be able to outdo this. And I was like, what? Sent me a link to a song he wrote called You Suck. And so I don't know if you ever heard it, but it's about a sports team and about how they suck. And so anyways, and he's in a marching band and stuff like that. And it's really a funny song. And you can check the video out online, and it's called You Suck. And it's so nice to know that I inspired that with him. And to this day, we still, you suck.
Wow.
I love
that. What a great story.
It's like, hope you have a sucky Christmas. Wow, what a crappy birthday, huh? Must have sucked. Stuff like that. It's every single message I have that we've ever had has the word suck in it somewhere.
That's amazing.
That's what I get.
I mean,
that's a great, I don't think I've ever told that story or where it all came from and how it manifested into other things.
That's so funny.
Of suckage. So there you go.
Love it.
30 odd years later, you suck.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah, so crazy.
So I love it. So Dan, I do want to talk to you about your photography too, because I know that's something that you're, I think, enjoying, because you're not in the public eye because of it, kind of thing, other than you are well known in the photography world now about that. So what makes a good photo to Dan? What makes a great photo?
Something that makes you go, one, how did they do it? Because that's like, how did they pull this off? Because a lot of stuff is fake now, Photoshop and all that kind of stuff. And I like to do it in real time, and not have to do the Photoshop thing. And I remember I was shooting a family one time, and they wanted something really unique and fun. Their daughter was a singer-songwriter, country artist, and the boys were all in hockey, and the parents were awesome. And so I said, could we shoot it in a hockey arena? And they were like, okay. And so I got the daughter to be there with her guitar and her dress and up on a stick box, in the bench. And then the dad with one of those little rink, like the small rink thing with a marker, and he was pointing at his other kid, his son, and yelling at him, right? And pointing at the thing, and the kid's like this, right? And then the other two sons are doing a face-off, and the mom is dropping the puck, all at the same time. And it turned out amazing. And it turns out now that two of the guys are in the NHL.
Wow.
And yeah, right? Is that crazy? And they have this picture hanging in their house above their fireplace. And when the guys got drafted, the TV networks, whatever sports network, went to their house and showed the picture. And I was like, that's my picture. Oh my God. So it's something that people will either question how you did it and pulled it off, or it's something that makes you be emotional, or something that you just go, wow, that is really cool. I was working with somebody who was a circus artist, and she could do, handstands and all that kind of stuff. And she really wanted to shoot in her grad dress, like a wreck the dress type thing. So anyways, so I said, let's go to the lake. And what I want you to do is I want you to walk really fast into the water, and walk as fast as you can. And it'll look like you're walking on water, and it's my job to capture it. And so it was a cloudy day. It was beautiful, this bright pink dress. And she starts walking away, wind's blowing in her hair, the dress is billowing. And in the first shot, she's starting out, so you can see a little bit of water movement. And then the second one, the dress is billowing, her hair is blowing, she's walking out, and it's just such a beautiful photo. And then in the third one, she's completely underwater. And it looks like she's walking on the water. People are like, how did you pull that off? I said, she's an athlete. She went from stop to full speed in no time. And that's how we got it on the second shot. But I shot each one individually. I didn't shoot to successive. And so one of the things with dance photography specifically, like when we went to Abbey Road and we shot the dancer jumping across the intersection there at Abbey Road, we only did it 4 times, only 4 pictures.
Wow.
Because that's what you do when you do it, right? And so the first 3, people were standing around all, watching, right? And asking, oh, what's your Instagram? I'd love to see the picture when it's done, all that kind of stuff. And then we went off to the side and I said, oh my God, everybody's gone back to being normal. Go back and do it again. And she went back and did. I run out. Her husband holds the traffic. I run out and she jumps. And anyway, and we got this iconic picture. And then I got a message from Abbey Road Studios saying, we loved your picture. We saw you on the cameras shooting this. And we wondered what you were doing. And so I was like, oh, and she was with the English National Ballet at the time. And so it was really cool, like to just create things that people go, wow, because it's something that isn't typical. And so it's either beautiful or isn't typical. I love the juxtaposition idea, just when it doesn't make sense. Or I like to take somebody, like I took a dancer when we were in England. I had a dancer eating fish and chips, big giant piece of fish and holding chips, and on point. And it was just funny and fun and didn't make any sense, but it was cool. So that's where I come from in here, that, just do something that you don't see every day.
Right.
So
from a photography
perspective.
People are looking at photos all day, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. If something can make you stop and really pay attention to what's going on, like that photo you have with the lady pulling the airplane, like,
oh, right, okay, yeah, that was one of the ones I had always. So I went to a plane pull. It was a charity event, and they were doing a plane pull. And I was like, what if we got a ballerina who was so tiny and petite and this plane and this rope, and if I can get her to lean hard enough and she's heavy enough, she might be able to lift the rope off the ground and then it'll look, but we shot it for real. There's no Photoshop in that. That's, there's processing in it, but I didn't change anything. It was her pulling the airplane, it was like so cool. And so, like you said, if you can create something iconic or something that makes people go, wow, that's kind of cool. That's a really, awesome thing to pull off. And I like doing it.
That's cool. Where do you, we'll say this final question of the evening. Where do you see your photography going? Like, I know you like what you do. Where do you see it going in the next little while?
I don't know. I've always kind of just done it for me.
Yeah.
And then people appreciated it. And then I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I get to work with really famous people. If I could do any kind of photography, I would love to do celebrity photography because I have that ability to connect with people, like you were talking about earlier, where people they accept you as you are. They're not, there's no pretense. They just like you. And you're likable and you're friendly. And I would love to tap into that and shoot people in their real environments, being themselves or doing something ridiculous where you wouldn't expect them to be doing that, And so if I could transition at all or grow my photography, that's where I would want to grow it.
That's awesome. It's a really cool idea.
And that would be at tdphoto.com, FOTO.
tdphoto.ca.
Oh, .ca.
Awesome.
Got to keep that Canadian content.
We're in Canada,
That's right. That's right.
Got to make sure you get the
Or you can find me on social media. It's easier because nobody goes to websites anymore. They go to social media. So at Tarzan Dan on Instagram, on Facebook, just put it in the search engine. You'll find me.
He's out there. Worst case, put it in the Google bot. It'll tell you everything you need to know.
There you go. Exactly. It'll find me. It still amazes me when I Google my name, just to see what is out there. And it's just like, oh my God. The other day, somebody sent me a photograph from years ago. And it was a Madonna concert, I think it was, from 1993. And she had the ticket stub and I had signed it. And I think it was like $39 to go to the concert.
Wow.
Imagine that, huh? Back in the day.
That's one of the fees you have to pay today.
$39 to go to a Madonna concert.
Yeah, that won't even cover the fee these days.
So
no, exactly right.
Yeah.
You can't even breathe the air of Madonna for $39 anymore.
You cannot. Impossible.
You certainly can't get her pillowcase with lipstick on it for $39.
That's true.
No, exactly. I should probably just put it out. The fact is I don't have any proof outside of the radio contest we did. So but I do have other stuff that I probably, I'm thinking about maybe going through the bin and going, hey, like I have so many random things, like just completely random things. One of my favorite things that I have is a Run DMC hat that they all signed.
Oh, wow.
That's sick, yeah.
Like so cool, right? Like the nicest guys in the world. Just so fun.
Iconic, yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you the number of people who have had I've had phenomenal experiences with. The Brian May story is such a wonderful story. I was at the radio station, walking down the hall, and I look in one of the studios, and it's Brian May. I'm like, Brian May, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh, I'm doing an interview very shortly. I was like, oh my God, I can't even believe I'm breathing in the same room as you. And we had a great conversation, and I was just like, I can't even believe it. He goes, so where are you going? And I said, I'm going down the hall here. I got to go do my radio show. And I said, I wish I had a Sharpie or something for you to write on, or a picture or something, because I can't believe that I just met you, and I don't even have a camera or anything. Nobody's going to ever believe me. And so anyways, maybe an hour later, after he had done the interview, he knocks on my studio door and opens it, and he goes, hi, can I come in? And I go, you're freaking Brian May. Of course you can come in. What are you talking about? Dude, come in. And he goes, I went down to the limo and I got you an 8x10 and I signed it for you.
Oh, yeah.
And he gives it to me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, you didn't go down. You had the record label guy go down. He goes, nope. He says, in this day and age, I appreciate anybody who wants to talk to me. And he said, so I went down and got it. And I was like, man, one of your heroes, even cooler than you thought, right? So, I have that hanging in my basement because it's so cool. So cool.
You should, I don't know if you wanted to post these things like a memorabilia Monday or something and post them on your social media. That'd be so cool because
we're talking about it actually. I know that iHeart had talked about doing the Big Blue Bin and have me pull something out of it, whether it's an autograph or whatever, and just reach in, pull out, and then tell a story about it.
I mean,
because, it's like, you have a Billy Joel autograph and you pull the Billy Joel autograph out and you have a story about, I interviewed him and it was a really funny interview and it was a lot of fun. And I went and saw his show in New York, actually. It was incredible. But at the time, my favorite song was All for Lena and Rosalinda's Eyes. And those were old school hits and lesser hits. And so we talked about that. And he told me that Rosalinda was actually his mom. And so I got into this whole conversation. It was like a real conversation. And then we talked Italian food and where to go in New York. And so, you know what I mean?
Amazing.
Like to interview somebody like Frankie Valli from the Four Seasons, and we ended up talking about Italian food, and laughing our butts off. That guy was so funny. I said, at the time there was Frank Sinatra, Frankie Avalon, and Frankie Valli. One of them has to die. Who's it going to be? And he goes, it's got to be that Frankie Valli guy because I never liked, or not Frankie Valli, Frankie Avalon kid because I never liked him. And he said, and Frank Sinatra, you would never, ever. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I can't believe Frankie Valli is goofing around with me, and so to think of those people and then icons like a Mariah Carey or a J-Lo or, name them, and I've probably interviewed them and been fortunate enough to have an experience. And so that's the cool thing I think I'll take with me through all of this is that I'm the guy who got lucky enough to have all these experiences and it's documented on my walls in the basement.
Amazing.
Love it, man.
And that'd be great material for a book too. If you ever do decide, I think I'd be first in line to purchase that. I think it'd be great, great read.
I have never really seriously given it any thought, but you guys have kind of triggered me to go, maybe I should talk to somebody just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the audiobook, then you can It's a little easier just talking to the microphone and somebody else puts it back together for you and put it out.
You're assuming that people who
chapters.
like my show can actually read.
I can barely read, but hey, I can
get through a book.
That's it. It's like, sound out the words for us, please. That's half of the book right there. Sounding out the words, or the words I made up. Anyways,
love it.
Oh my God! Well, it was awesome hanging out with you guys. I appreciate it so much.
We really appreciate you, man. We really appreciate it, and thanks for all of the history, the moments, all that fun stuff. Like I say, you guys were, I think, a bigger impact than you realize. And we love it. We still love it.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. It's been fun. I really have. I'm looking forward to seeing this posted, and I can share it, and we can see it, have a life of its own.
Awesome.
Wayne's World. That's
right. That's right. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you very much, Dan. You have a great evening, my friend. Thank you, buddy.
See ya.
Take care.